Hello, friends. It's Paul with B&B Theaters. Hope wherever you are watching this, that you are safe and comfortable, happy and healthy. This pandemic, man, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Hoping we'd be on the other side of it by now, but we aren't. In the meantime, though, we've tried to do a few things to stay on the top of your mind without being, overwhelming or anything. But we've conducted a few Zoom interviews with friends of ours across the industry, some studio executives, some producers, some sound technicians. And today I am joined by something of a jack of all trades. We've got a music man, we've got an actor, a model, a choreographer. He's done work on the stage, on the small screen, and we will all see him soon, well, hopefully, as the Smiling Man in Marvel's The New Mutants. I'm joined today by Dustin Ceithamer. Dustin, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your interview.
Yeah, well, thank you. We tried this on Wednesday. The Zoom gods were not cooperative, so I'm glad that things seem to be working out for now. So, hey, listen, all of the other people we've spoken with on this little Zoom session were on the West Coast in LA. You're coming to us from New York, though. Are you a New York native, or are you just there on work? What's the deal?
Originally from the Southern California area, and I moved to New York about 2 years ago because I've written an off-Broadway musical, and it was being produced, and so I needed to be closer to the action of where it was happening. So New York is the place to be for live stage performance and things like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I was gonna go somewhere else, but tell me about that project. Is this sort of a passion project of yours, or how did it come about?
Absolutely. I grew up as a kid just performing and singing in the church choir, and we had like a drama team at our church. And so at a really young age, I was exposed to art and creativity, and it just really stuck with me. And throughout the years, I've really dabbled in a lot of different areas, always been fascinated from behind the scenes of how things work, and visual artists and music. And so I've done a lot of musical theater over the years, but I got into writing in my early 20s, and I began, writing several musicals, and they've been produced in the Southern California area. Some of them have toured, I've done some mid tours and things like that. But this was my first production to go out of California, and it was just a dream come true to have it be produced in New York as an off-Broadway show. We got, the playbill that says, playbill at the top and has the show's logo. And it was so, it just felt like a dream the entire time.
Yeah, man, congratulations. What a cool feeling. I mean, I don't even, like, I kind of alluded to this, I guess, when I was introducing you, but if you were to say, I have a business card here, I'm Dustin Ceithamer, what would it be? Because you've done a lot of different things. And I've heard that there are schools of thought kind of in Hollywood, like don't over hyphenate, don't be producer, actor, writer, director, act, whatever. But it seems to have worked out pretty well for you.
One of my friends, his name is Willem Belli, and he's an actor and a comedian, and he's really known, I think, in like the drag culture too. He's like a drag queen, but one of his favorite quotes of it, it's like, if you have a paycheck, I have a talent. And like, try to make a freelance artist, it's very difficult. The jobs aren't, there's a lot of competition, and the jobs are kind of few and far between. And so in order for me, some people are just so good at what they do that they're the first call when someone thinks of like, I need a violin player, I'm calling this guy first, but my life hasn't really been like that. So I've loved acting and dancing and singing and writing, but I've had to learn a lot of skills in between to kind of make my life work. Just to I've had some, what I would say, like survival jobs in between and different things.
Sure.
But I mean, almost for the past 20 years have been able to be solely an artist. But if you figure out what to put on my business card, let me know, because I still don't know what to do.
Well, so, I mean, did you discover then, I guess there were certain natural inclinations or interests, and how did you pursue learning and improving the skills that you knew would be marketable, but that maybe weren't quite so innate? I mean, was it a matter of going to school or finding a mentor, or?
Growing up, I had the most, and they're still with us, but the most supportive parents. And they really just saw, maybe even more than my talent or natural ability, they saw my interest, and they saw how fascinated I was with the process of putting like theater together, or the process of making a movie. And I was fascinated by the design teams and the writing teams and the actual performances, and the makeup crew and the costume crew. There's so many people. It takes so, at the end of a movie, you see all those credits going up of hundreds of people that it takes to make one creative project. And I think that I just was always fascinated by how many jobs there are in a single movie. And when I was little, my parents joked that they were my taxi service, driving me to and from rehearsals. And we didn't have a lot of extra money. I'm sorry, there's like a fly.
Yeah, that's all right.
We didn't have a lot of extra money growing up, and so I wasn't able to take dance classes or vocal lessons like that as a kid. But I did a lot of community theater, and my parents would take me to all the rehearsals. I never heard them complain once about, "Oh, we have to take you again tonight." And they would even take me to rehearsals that I wasn't necessarily supposed to be at, just because I loved to watch the director work, and I loved to watch the choreographer and the music director. And I remember just sitting at rehearsals that I wasn't, they call it called to, if you're supposed to be there. So rehearsals I wasn't called to be at, and I would just be sitting in the back, just mentally taking notes and thinking like, that was so smart that the director told that person to do that, and really just absorbing. And so I think that really played a part of like just my curiosity, but my parents and their support and willing to drive me places. And community theater is free. You don't
Yeah.
have to pay to be a part. One can go and just learn. And so I had really supportive parents in that way. And then yeah, I really tried to work at a lot of different theaters to get a lot of different exposure to different, every theater is kind of their own little castle, and they have their own way of doing things. And so I would kind of look and see like, oh, that's fascinating. I wonder how they're doing it at this theater. So I would go and work at that theater. And I just really tried to be exposed to a lot of different directors and choreographers. And I think it really it exposed me to a lot of different ways of doing things.
Yeah. Do you recall if there was sort of a watershed moment or a particular success when you were like, man, this is something that I could do to pay the bills? This is something I could do for the rest of your days.
I I think I always hoped that
Yeah.
was true because I loved it so much. I wasn't certain that it was practical, you know, but I think I always hoped that that was true. That maybe there's a way that I can, they say if you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life.
Hmm.
And I just thought that maybe there's a way that I could do what I love. And I think by exploring the different areas, it has allowed me to continue just to be an artist and learn as I've gone on.
Yeah. Well, in those different areas, I mean, as I was admittedly creeping through your Instagram, I mean, you've done a ton of, I mean, you've done modeling, you've done work on choreography for television, you've got this big screen thing with the New Mutants. Is your approach to those projects, is there a universal tack you take when you're coming into a new project, or is it a matter of learning the lay of the land and figuring out the best way to do your best work?
Yeah, I think you kind of like we're hitting on it. There's different schools of thought. Like some people just say focus on one thing and just be the best that you can in that area. And I think that there's a lot to that. To be exceptional at what you do will set you above the rest. Um, Something that we haven't really taught or like touched on, and it might be kind of hard to tell because I'm sitting down and it's a Zoom call, but
Oh, I was
I'm
getting
six,
there.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm 6'8". And being so tall, I mean, that's Kobe height. That's I'm taller, taller than Kobe was, and LeBron James, and I'm maybe a little shorter than him, but I'm like a pro basketball player, in stature. But I think as a performer, um, that's been my greatest asset and also my greatest hindrance, because I'm not super castable in everything. So, if someone had a maybe more normal, a normal build or look, they could be right for a lot of things, but when I walk into a room, no one is usually hoping that like, oh, I hope someone who's 6'8" walks in today.
Right.
It catches them off guard. Is this? And even if they really like me, sometimes they just don't have a place for me. And I had to learn that early on, that I could be extremely good at something and extremely not right for the project.
Mm.
I used to think personally if I didn't get cast or if they didn't pick me for, a job, but I just, whether I get it or not doesn't change the fact that I might be really good at it.
Yeah.
But I just right for the project. And I think that that was like such a valuable lesson to learn really early on. I did the Pirate of the Caribbean movies. I was cast as the governor's son, and that was, years and years ago. And I ended up, they cut it out of the film, which like broke my heart. I really thought it was my big break. Like
Yeah.
this is the point. And, just to be part of such a huge feature film. And I just remember them removing me from different scenes and just scratching my head and think, why am I here? And but you just kind of learn that you can be really good for something and just really not what it needs, and it's all about serving the story ultimately. And so, but on the other hand, the same casting directors that, I'll go in and I'll dazzle them, they'll really like me. They're like, oh, we just don't have anything for you. I'll get a call in 6 months. I go into a file that's like freak or, actual type, or, I go into that file of their cabinet. And in 6 months, when that role comes up, they're like, remember that real tall guy, and so I'll get a lot of, in the business, we call it offer only, where you don't have to audition for things. They just call you and offer you a job. And that's the goal. That's the Meryl Streep, she doesn't have to audition, calling her. And I'm not at that level. But sometimes, I get to pretend I am. I'm like, oh, I was offer only for this job. And I've had a lot of fun. And I've gotten to work with a lot of creative people, because I think someone who would pick me to be part of their project would probably be an outside of the box thinker. So I've really enjoyed working with very creative people over the years.
Yeah, it looks too, and admittedly, I'm not as familiar with your catalog as clearly you are, but just from your Instagram feed, for example, you've worked on some projects that are very, man, I mean, like interesting, like very heavily artistic, in terms of some of that modeling stuff too, where perhaps your specific build is exactly what they're looking for. And you've clearly, aside from being naturally very tall, have put a tremendous amount of work into developing yourself physically. In terms of, though, this offer only, is that how the New Mutants thing came about? Because this character is like crazy. Like the Smiling Man character is wild. What was that like? How did that come about? And what was it like pursuing that kind of role? I guess it's probably been a little while now since it's been in the can, but from what you can recall, tell us how that all went down.
It was so exhilarating. And I think that the best thing about it is I didn't know what I was auditioning for when I auditioned for it. I got a text from an unknown number, someone that I had like met somewhere along the, like the past 20 years, someone texted me and said, hey, I just saw this audition notice for feature film. I thought you might be interested in it. And I just was like, oh, thanks,
Yeah.
And I read the description, and they were looking for someone who was 6'10", so 2 inches taller. They wanted someone 6'10" to 7'4", who they wanted an athlete, someone who was very athletic, but not too bulky. They said they wanted someone who was very flexible and not allergic to makeup.
Okay.
And there was like a few little puzzle pieces, and it was for an untitled project for 20th Century Fox. So I didn't know if I knew it was for X-Men when I was auditioning for it, I would have been freaking out. And so I think the greatest like kindness that God gave to me was that I had no idea of what I was auditioning for.
Is that typical? Do they send out that kind of information without telling you what it's for?
Sometimes with larger projects, they try to wraps, and they don't want a lot of people knowing about it or crashing the auditions or bothering them, as they're in their process. And so they'll put out a pretty in-depth character description of what they're looking for, send that to the, each studio has a department of casting directors, and they're the people who ultimately hire people or show the cream of the crop to the directors, so then the directors can choose who they want.
Okay.
But the directors will send out like a casting notice, basically like a job description, to a lot of the agents in the area. So everyone is, the agents are looking like, who do I know who's 6'10" to 7'4", and I would love to submit that person. So they might not know what the project is for, but when it's for a larger studio, you usually know it's a credible project.
Okay.
But yeah, so here's the story.
Go ahead.
I had done a musical. There's a musical called The Addams Family, and I played the butler in it. And I had this shoe that it's like a boot, and in it, it has a hidden platform. But from the outside, it doesn't. It's basically like a high heel in a boot, and it makes me 6 inches taller than I am. So I'm 6'8", and so I went in that day wearing this boot that from the outside, it doesn't look like a Frankenstein shoe. It just looks like a normal boot. 7'2" when I went to the audition, and my hair is, it was a little longer at the time, and I braided in like huge extensions, and I put those all on the top of my head. So I wanted to appear, because I was too short for the role. They wanted so much. So I wore these huge shoes. I had this huge, basically man bun on the top of my head. And, I walked in, and they showed me, the audition process was wild. So usually they would give you scenes from the movie so you can learn the dialogue and, act and things like that. But with this particular role, and I think the high profile nature of the project, they didn't want any pieces of the script in anyone's hands. And so I got there and I met the casting director. She was wonderful. And she basically said, all right, so today I'm just going to show you a series of photographs of monsters. And I want you to show me how you would physicalize bringing these monsters to life. And then I'll give you some scenarios. So
Wow.
I saw this, it was basically a rendering of the SMILEY Man. And I just was like, this is the cool, I don't care what this project is. I would be so thrilled to collaborate to bring this character to life. And so we went through a series of, she said, how would this character break into a bedroom and kidnap a child? Or how would this, she just gave me all of these crazy circumstances, how would this, creature crawl out from under a bed? Or how would they chase someone down a hallway? Or if it got angry, what would it sound like? So nothing was from a script. It was all improvisation. And it was so fun. I left that day just having it was like being at preschool. We just got to play around and pretend to be monster.
Yeah. Well, so when it came time to shoot and you're actually filming this character, did they have direction then in terms of the way you sounded and the way you moved, or was it all informed based on what you presented to them in the audition?
They really liked what I brought to the table. There of course was direction, and based on the script, there were certain things I had to do. And so they would kind of direct certain things, but they really liked the direction that I instinctually went to.
Yeah.
And what I found out later is they had been seeing a lot of people who are 7'2" or over 7 foot, but these men are more actual, almost like giants. Their brows, they're kind of slower in movement. A lot of them don't have flexibility or couldn't touch their toes. And I'm like a pretzel. So, I can see in hindsight why it was kind of hard for them. I found out that they had been looking for about 6 months to find my character. So they had searched the East Coast, they had done South America. They had been really looking for me.
And there you were.
And there I was. But yeah, so that was just, it was so surreal. I finally found out that it was for X-Men, and then being on that set was just incredible.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I mean, you can't be allergic to makeup.
No.
Was that was it like on your face? Was that all CG after the fact? What was that process like getting into character?
They really so this was fascinating to me because of the high profile nature of the project. I didn't see a script till after I got to the shoot. So it's like I showed up, my first day I didn't have a script yet. It wasn't until day 2 that I actually got a script of the film. So I couldn't do prep character work or
Yeah.
anything. I just, leading up to it, there was probably about a month where they weren't quite sure when they needed me on set, and we filmed in Boston at a mental hospital, which was so crazy and so it's called the Medford State Hospital, and it's out of business now, but it's like this 1800s mental ward that is abandoned. And they made it look a lot different for the film, but even just walking through, there was like scratch marks on some walls,
Oh my
and
gosh.
can find people. And when we weren't shooting, like some of the actors and the stunt people, we would like run around and like explore and go looking through all the buildings, and it was really cool.
Yeah, what a trip. That's crazy that you were cast and on set before you're like, what are we doing exactly?
What are
That's
we doing?
wild. How exciting, man.
Yeah, I really had to just trust that, because I was kind of freaking out, because I I wanted to perform well and I wanted to bring my best, like my A game, and I just felt a little underprepared. But I really just trusted that they knew what they needed, and if they thought I needed more preparation, I I'm sure they would have given me more preparation.
Yeah.
So it was like having to let go of common sense and just like trust them, and like, oh, I hope they're right. I hope I don't get to day 1 and they're like, this guy is a disaster. That was kind of in the back of my mind, like, don't be a disaster, don't be a disaster.
Right. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see it. I've been a fan of those films for a long time. That one, The New Mutants, man, it's been a weird journey because it was right on the thing with the Disney Fox acquisition, and then the coronavirus ruined everything for everyone. But I think we're looking at August now. Is that right?
Yeah, August, I believe it's 23rd. We've had a few dates in the between, but yeah, the last I heard it was August 23rd.
Okay. Well, I'm excited, and now I'm going to scream out when I'm in theater watching it. I'm like, I talked to that guy. I know who that guy is.
Yeah.
Well, I know that your life and career has been upended throughout this pandemic situation, the same as so many others. Do you have projects, irons in the fire right now, or is it just sort of a waiting game until things get back to normal?
There's an element of trying to be as prepared as you can for when things open up, but it's just hard to know. So I think a lot of businesses that have been closed, they have like a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and have kind of made a structure of like, well, if it extends till June, if it extends till August, if it goes till 2021. But I've been working a lot on my writing. My musical, which is called Revelation the Musical, we've really been brainstorming maybe potential ways to take the off-Broadway show and maybe make it more available to the masses through maybe some online distribution or things like that. So we've been really thinking about what that might look like, and so just been really brainstorming with just kind of the team.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I guess I just kind of do have one more question. This is really a matter of more personal curiosity than anything. And if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to, or we can cut it out if you don't like it. But I noticed when I was watching some of your videos that you posted on Instagram, some videos, maybe it might be in that apartment right there. You're playing the keyboard and you're singing. A lot of the content that you sing is like, it's like praise music.
Yeah.
Which suggests to me perhaps you are a man who holds his faith close to his heart. Or is that
Yeah.
not I'm just curious how you've managed to juggle. I'm
That can
sorry.
be like funny that's like a triggering question these days, or
I
potentially.
just want to be careful.
Now,
We just met. But I mean, and maybe I'm mischaracterizing Hollywood, right? But it seems to me a business that is very self-serving. You have to be looking out for number one, very cutthroat. Whereas the life of faith is one of charity and of giving and selflessness. How have you managed to try and keep those two things active at the same time. It seems like that might be difficult. But then again, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, no, it is. There's a lot of, it's a very layered, um, there's a lot of elements to it, and there's a lot of polarization
Yeah.
within country as it is, but in media as well. And there's a lot of misunderstanding on just, I feel like sometimes I'm in two worlds. I have like, um, I have like a very, secular, career, and I have a very, spiritual side of myself, and trying to like, how can I be authentic to both, and how can I honor the Lord in, wherever I am, and, just how can I, I don't know, keep the faith and try to, point people towards hope when I can. And it is interesting. It is, there is a balance to it, but there's so much joy too, like I think one of the things I love, about faith is that it's not that we're secure apart from what we do, that it's like we have value and we have worth outside of our performance. And, I've gotten wrapped up in different seasons of my life that it's all about what I do and it's all about what I contribute. And if I'm not performing well, if I'm not doing, I don't have a self-worth, and I don't have, value, or I don't have something to contribute. But, it's like, I know that my value doesn't come from, I guess a great way to say it is like, we are not our gifts.
Mm.
Our gifts are used, and we can have fun with them, and we can play with them and play with others and create these beautiful things. But ultimately it's like, we're not our gifts. Like we're outside of that. And so I think to know that we have worth and value outside of our giftings is like a really healthy place to approach art. Otherwise, you get a bad review and you're thrown, or you don't get a job and it's devastating. I mean, it's just, if your worth and value rests upon the jobs that you get or what people are saying about you, it's a real, if you're on a teeter-totter or a Jenga game, just waiting for
Yeah.
like crumble and fall.
Give you
So
some additional perspective then.
yeah, so I think my faith has been really important to me, just as a centering force in my life. And it's so fun just to like, I was raised in a Christian tradition, and the first thing that we learn about God is like, in the beginning, God created. The very first thing that we learn about God is that He's artistic in nature, and I'm like, ew. So there's a lot of joy in connecting to, like that God of creativity.
That's outstanding. Thank you so much. Dustin, I appreciate your time, man. I'll kind of let you go. I certainly wish you the best. I know that we can't wait to get back to business as usual. I don't know when that's going to be, but as soon as we can, we'll get movies back on screen. And we look forward to getting yours up there toward the end of August.
Thank you. So excited. I can't wait to sit in a movie theater and smell the popcorn, and just, there's something so magical about sitting in that dark room and just being transported. And I can't wait to do it again. Thank you for what you do, and just get those businesses open, keep them safe, and give us those movies.
You bet. All right. Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate your time, man.